Hey guys, I'm about to do some transplanting here and I thought I should share with you the 5 things that you should know about before you get started with transplanting, otherwise you can kill off your seedlings. All right, let's start with tip number 1. So my first tip to you is to avoid soil or potting mixes that have poor drainage. I personally would avoid using native soil to start my seedlings because my soil here is very dense. It is mostly clay. There are people that have success using just native soil, and that all depends on what type of soil you have. As for those bag soil that you find at big box stores, you want to stay away from things that says topsoil, topper, or garden soil because those are mainly used for filling up, large holes or spaces. Maybe you can put it on the bottom of your raised beds to kind of fill in the areas or to top off your garden beds. So it's more for, growing in the ground rather than up little pots and containers. Those type of soils usually too dense for the roots to penetrate because a lot of those are just mainly like composted down forest products or leaves and weeds. So it's just something that helps to absorb moisture really well, which is good in a way, but without the perlite, the things that help to improve drainage, it's going to end up rotting your seedlings because when it's in a container, when you water too much, there's nowhere to go but to sit in there. When you water it over time, it also gets really compact. But of course, when it comes to watering, always do it from the tray rather than the actual pots. So the things that you should be looking for should say something like organic potting mix or potting soils. This is the brand that I use quite a lot called Ocean Forest, and no, this is not sponsored. I've been using this for years. The ingredients are 50 to 60% aged forest products, stagnant peat moss, perlite, sandy loam, and fertilizers. And the fertilizers, they have lots of things like from fish emulsion, crab meal, shrimp meal, earthworm castings, bat guano, kelp meal. So it's got lots of good stuff and minerals in here to allow your seedlings and your plants and even all the way to roses and fruit trees to thrive. I usually don't see this one carried at regular stores, but Home Depot online should have it. You can also check out local hydroponic stores, but this does come with a pretty hefty price. My friend over at Green Zebra Gardening, he mixes the two between Ocean Forest and the Kellogg's Patio Plus. A lot of the potting mixes out there, they're pretty decent, but they don't contain as much of the fertilizers. So mixing the two would be nice. Otherwise, anything from the big box stores, at least look for things that says organic potting mix or organic potting soils. That would work. They would advertise that as potting soil for pots and containers. This one actually says it's ideal for container gardens and houseplants, so it's for indoor and outdoor use. The things that I look for in growing seedlings or younger plants are, the soil to be fluffy and have really good drainage, but also at the same time would hold in moisture, but not too much to the point where it would drown out your plants. The Ocean Forest is one of the brands that have pretty fine potting mix in there, although I do find a few chunks here and there, but other brands I usually do see even more bigger chunks, but you can just pick those out. You can sift through it and use the finer stuff. Soil with larger chunks would have these pocket holes that are not good for the plants. Tip number 2 is don't use pots that are too big. Use appropriate pot sizes for your transplants and your seedlings. You want to choose the right size pots for your plants, especially for younger plants and seedlings. It's kind of like giving an adult's portion of food for a toddler to eat. The seedlings just don't have enough root system to pull up all the nutrients and the moisture in the soil. So what ends up happening is that you just have this really large pot with very wet soil that eventually would rot out the roots of your plants or seedlings, and they just end up dying. So the best thing to do is to put them in small little pots. I like putting them in about 1.5 or 2 inch pots like this because they fit perfectly in my 10 by 20 trays. But yeah, you can just basically put them in any kind of smaller pots and then transplant them to the next size up. And you do that gradually as the plant grows, or eventually you want to put them in the ground. It'll be so much easier to dig a hole for this size rather than a big one anyway. just want to take a quick moment to let you guys know some of the plants that are growing in this garden. I do offer them on my website. That would be a really great way to support this channel. Rare Japanese herbs like ashitaba, plants like Okinawa spinach that does well in shade and part shade. My possibly 15 feet tall tree collard. You definitely can keep this pruned, but I think it's pretty cool that it's so tall. Or the purple tree collard. When you grow these types of plants, you'll never be out of food. So I'll leave that link down below if you're interested. All right, let's get back to that video. All right, tip number 3, don't put it directly in the sun when your seedlings are young and they just, especially if you've been growing them indoors or even under grow lights, nothing is as strong as the sun. So make sure you harden off your plants by slowly introducing them to the sun. Gradually, day by day, increasing the hours. So you want to check on your local weather app, make sure that there is no extreme hot days. If there is, you want to provide them a bit of shade, perhaps move them to somewhere with like a more bright shaded location, somewhere with a cover on top. And that's what's great about potting these seedlings in, putting them in pots, is that you can kind of baby them that way. So easy to move them around. You can also form a little cover for them. So if it's on a warmer day, you want to make sure you give them appropriate watering, or if the day isn't too warm, you might not need to water as much. For more information about transplanting and hardening off your plants, check out that video. I'll link it down below. All right, tip number 3 was hardening off. Tip number 4 is to watch out for those cold nights. One cold night can even be enough to send your seedlings to death. So again, refer to your local weather, make sure that you're pulling those seedlings indoors on those extreme cold nights, and of course, get those seedlings out there, after the last day of frost. And sometimes nature can be unpredictable, so make sure that you are there to pull them inside on those really cold nights or days. Now, if you want to keep your seedlings outdoors, there are a few things that you can do to help increase the temperature just slightly so that they can feel more comfortable growing in this space. You can add a little cloth over it. You can even provide a dome for them. The dome can be plastic with just like a few holes that you punctured. There are plastic bottles that you can, cut the top off of, like those gallon jugs. And then you have yourself a little dome for your plants. Also, you have a vent. You can also use those clear or sheer plastic that are meant for tarping greenhouses. Whenever you are providing protection for your seedlings, make sure that there are holes a little bit, for breathing room, for air circulation, and that the plants inside won't get cooked in case of a really warm day ahead. Another way you can keep your plants warm is to use these storage or moving containers. I used to use something like this quite often, and it works really well. It's basically a small greenhouse you can easily move in and out. I couldn't find the right lid for this, but you'd want to find something with like a clear top, and inside is clear. You can just put plants inside, move it outside in the daytime, bring it indoor at night, or at least you can keep this, put the cover back on at night and leave it outside. That would still be warmer than, leaving your plants out in the open. Finally, tip number 5 is do not use fertilizers. And what I mean by that is those pellet fertilizers, they are so strong. They're more meant for established plants. So I think the earliest I would start introducing that type of fertilizer for my plants is during my 2nd or 3rd transplant. So the first transplant, they're just going, when the seed started to root and have its first set of true leaves, I do not use any kind of fertilizers like that. But when there's a more established root system, when I step up that pot size, that's when I start introducing a little bit of that kind of like granule pellets kind of fertilizers for it, or transplant it directly in the ground, but only if those are more like young plants. They're no longer seedlings. I also like to apply this type of fertilizers on the first top inch, just on the surface level of the area during like mid-season. These fertilizers are way too strong for these young plants. What they end up doing is burning and killing off those root systems. So don't do it. I have killed many plants in the past by doing that, either transplanting bare root strawberries or, putting it on my seedlings because I thought I was going to boost their growth very quickly. This is literally one of my favorite spots in the garden right now. The ashitaba is growing so lush and beautiful. Now that you know the 5 things that you should avoid before you transplant your seedlings, be sure to check out my video on the 5 things that you should do to boost the health and success of your seedlings. I'll put that video right up there once it's posted. And let me know in the comments below if you guys have any tips for us on what you like to do to avoid killing off your seedlings. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel and hit the bell button. All right, good luck to you in the garden. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.